Alright, what's up internet? This video is T for teen. The FTC seems to be super concerned about that for some reason now, so just throwing that out there right off the bat. This is a warrior tanking guide for beginners. There's a lot of guides out there on the internet, but most of them are for when you're level 60, and I think a lot of people have problems early on, like you make your warrior your plan to be a tank and you go into dead mines or ragefire chasm and aggro's everywhere, you're rage starved, and it's just not any fun at all. I was supposed to make this video a long time ago, but I didn't. Also, I'm not good at video editing, so this will probably be a straight run through, so I might stumble through a bit of it. Bear with me, and hopefully future videos will be better. Okay, one of the reasons people have so many problems in Dead Mines and Ragefire Chasm is because they don't have any of their abilities yet. As you get more abilities, your tanking will get easier. You're expected to have a rough time for those first few levels. Once you get into Scarlet Monastery, you should be good. But also, one of the biggest problems is people spec wrong to start with. What I recommend is you start in the arms tree instead of the prot tree. The parry is actually better for mitigation than the shield block. Shield block will only reduce your damage by your block value. The parry will reduce the damage by 100%. So getting 5% there is great. Then go into Tactical Mastery. This will allow you to do stance dancing. So you can charge in, shift into defensive stance, and start out with rage instead of going in with no rage at all and struggling to build it up. And then Anger Management increases the time required for your rage to decay while out of combat by 30%. It does this by instead of each tick of rage goes down by 3, so every tick it gives you 1 extra rage, so it's only going down by 2. However, when you're in combat, that 1 tick of rage still gives you 1 rage, so it's just free rage as long as you're in combat. It's actually pretty helpful for you. After that, move over to your prot tree. Get your 5% into shield specialization. That'll give you a 5% chance to block, and you can get rage when you're blocking. Between parry, block, and dodge, you'll now have a 25% chance at avoidance, and this will give you a 25% chance to proc your revenge, which is super high threat and will be a lot of help for you, and also really cheap on rage. Then move down and get your improved blood rage for some extra rage right off the bat, because like I said, rage is always an issue. You can put it into armor or into your stun and charm resistance. Most people go with the armor. It's really up to you. Get your defiance, and as soon as you have your defiance, that gives you an extra 15% threat while you're in defensive stance. Really, now everything's kind of up to you. It's just personal preference. The extra block from shield is always recommended, and last stand is always recommended, but I know a lot of people who forget to use their cooldowns, and so if you're one of those people, choose whatever you feel like. The 3 in revenge gives you a 45 chance to stun on revenge. It's a lot of fun, but sometimes because you're taking less damage, you'll get less rage and it'll cause you some issues. So you can always throw some of those into your talents up above, either your Iron Will or your Toughness if you like. Now on to when you first create your warrior. Right away you want to make sure you have your target of target turned on and your auto loot. Auto loot just to make it faster looting. When you're in a run, no one wants to wait on the tank. And your target of target, like this is what you use to see what your target's targeting. You can see that it's targeting you. If you're trying to tank without this, you're probably not enjoying it. If it switches off someone, as soon as that picture changes, you can hit your taunt to pick it back up, or use one of your high threat abilities. It's pretty much a must if you're tanking. It's really handy for all the other things also. Get a threat meter. Your threat meter is more for you to see what your threat's at than to see what everybody else's threat's at. If they don't have threat meters, they aren't going to show up anyways. A lot of times you can figure out where you need to get to threat before you can just start ignoring the target. You're not DPS, you're a tank. Your job is to hold aggro, and if you can get up to, like, in Scarlet Monastery it's around 1500. If you get to 1500 threat, you just start ignoring that target and start building, making sure you get up to 1500 on all the others. It can vary a little bit based on healing, and if you have a Shadow Priest that's Mind Blasting, you'll have to get considerably higher because Mind Blast has such high threat. But other than that, at the breakpoints, instead of continuing to spam your abilities, let your rage build up so that you have extra rage for the next pull. It'll make your life much easier. Alright. Back to the talent tree. Like I said, here you can kind of choose whatever you want once you've gotten your Defiance. There's a lot of people who will disagree with me, but this isn't for in-game rating. This is for leveling up. If you want to throw some more into your DPS, you can do that. Like some extra crits always nice. The Impale spec is a popular one, and Deep Wounds. You can do that. These are decent talents down here, but they aren't musts. If you're going to be doing a lot of questing and stuff, you'll probably want to get some damage on your own. Going down and picking up the one-handed specialization is pretty valuable though, because it'll end up giving you 2% extra damage while using a one-handed weapon. This pretty much makes up for the 10% you lose while in defensive stance. So it's worthwhile, but like I said, it's up to you. Once you get to max level, you'll respec anyways. Alright, so another big thing that's going to help you out is macros. I've been working on making some better macros. I will put them down in the description so you guys can download them. Originally I made some really generic, easy macros, but they weren't always super convenient. I started out with just the cast charge, cast defensive stance. When I hit my charge button, automatically switch to defensive stance. But then if the target's too far away or whatever, you switch to defensive stance, then you have to switch back. It really wastes time. I made this new macro. It's a cast, combat condition, defensive stance, battle stance, charge. So it'll cast battle stance and charge if you're not in combat. If you're in combat, it'll only cast defensive stance. So you just mash it a few times, go up to charge the target. Once you get there, it'll go into defensive stance. You don't have to worry about it switching you out. Or if anything else happens, you can always just hit the macro. It'll take you right back into defensive stance. Sometimes you might want to jump out to do like your thunderclap or whatnot. I made macros for that. If you're using those, you got to make sure that you put them on the same place in the stance bar as they are in this one. So like if I hit my thunderclap, I change to defensive stance, but I need that macro to be here so I can hit it again to finish out, switch back into, or I switch to battle stance. I need to hit it again so I can switch back out into defensive stance. Otherwise, you get stuck and you can't switch back. The Whirlwind macro I have up here can hit it. I can't actually use it because I don't have enough rage to cast Whirlwind. So my macros, I'm still working on learning how to make some better ones. Right now, the ones for dancing while in combat are based on cast sequence. Cast sequence reset the cooldown time of the ability, and then cast the ability, or change stance, cast the ability, defensive stance, and then do a second defensive stance. This way you can't change into defensive stance twice. It'll end the cast sequence, and then it'll reset in the time of the ability's cooldown, so you can use it again later. Every time you hit the button though, it restarts that reset cooldown, so if you keep mashing the button before it's reached its cooldown, you'll have some issues. I tried doing some of the tooltip stuff, but it just shows me the tooltip for the stance I'm changing to. If anyone's great at macros and has some tips for me, let me know down in the comments. Other than that, like I said, I'll post these in the description, and they're pretty easy to use. And macros are super helpful when doing any of the dancing. Reasons you'll do stuff like that is you want to stance for like hamstrings so that you can slow a target if it's running away and you don't want it pulling another group, or for thunderclap just so you can hit 4 targets. Later on, the Whirlwind's an option. The problem with Whirlwind is you switch into Berserker Stance, which makes you take 3% more damage. Oh no, increases damage taken by 10%. So you go from 10% reduction into a 10% damage increase, so you take 20% more damage while you're in Berserker Stance. You should only be in Berserker Stance for about 1.5 seconds though, so it's not a big deal, and hitting 4 targets is really helpful for grabbing quick aggro right away. Getting aggro right off the bat is super important, because otherwise as soon as you get a heal, all the mobs run to the healer, which is no fun for anybody. Okay, this is again where revenge comes in really helpful. Like, Revenge only takes 5 rage. It's super high threat, and it procs, 1 out of 4 times when you're attacked. So when you charge in, Sunder the first target, tab to the next one, Revenge, tab to the next one, and even a hit or a Sunder will work great. The goal is just to hit all of the targets in the group as quick as possible, so that as soon as your healer heals you, they don't run off to them, because then all the mobs are spread out and it's big pain for everybody. Mark one as Skull. Mark the first one you're going to hit as Skull. Tab through, hit all of them, go back to Skull, make sure you have threat on it, and then, like I said, build up to whatever you've noticed your threat cap is using your threat meter. Like I said, for Scarlet Monastery, it'll be about 1500. Once you're up to 1500 on that target, go to the next one, build up again. But initially you have to make sure you hit all of them to make sure none of them are running off. The other big thing with tanking is line of sighting. Always use line of sights whenever they're available. If you pull a group, run around a corner, run into a little cubby or something, so that they can't see you, so that the casters will come to you and the ranged targets will come to you. At low levels, people usually aren't very good, and a lot of times will attack them ahead of time, or your healer will start healing you standing out in the open, and the mobs will stop and start casting on them. You just need to, adjust to how the people in your group are playing, and at the lower levels, they usually play much worse than the higher levels. When you start tanking, I think the biggest problem people have is just getting discouraged because of the difficulty they have dealing with players who are just attacking things left and right off the bat, or pulling extra groups, or not attacking Skull. Alright, did you see that fancy video editing? That was me hitting pause because it's a lot easier to show you some stuff when I'm not standing in Iron Forge. And because I don't actually know how to edit videos. So this is the macro. Say you're in defensive stance, you just finished, you want to charge the next target, you spam it, switches you stance. As soon as you're in combat, it'll only put you into defensive stance. No matter what you do, it doesn't do anything else. Once you build up enough rage, we can see that our overpowered proc, so we can use our overpower macro, which will also switch you, hit the target, and bring us back into defensive stance. We get up to 25 rage. We use the Whirlwind macro. With any of the stance macros, one of the things you gotta keep in mind is you are going to dump anything over 25 rage that you have. So like if a mob's running away from you and you have a full rage bar and it's just gonna run into a group you plan on pulling next anyways, don't stance to hamstring him, because he won't run into the next group, but you'll not have any rage once you get to the next group. It's a lot better to keep your rage bar if you can. Again, Revenge, super cheap, 5 rage, does tons of threat. The Sunder comes up quickly. I prefer really fast weapons, that way you can build your rage up quick. The other reason I really like fast weapons is you may have noticed a few little flame bursts when I was fighting. That's due to the Fiery Blaze enchantment, which you can get here at 40. There's a quest. It enhances the weapon to give it a 15% chance to do 9-13 fire damage to all enemies within 3 yards. If you are making an alt as a tank, you can get a BOE item, enchant it, give it to your alt, or you can get a friend to enchant this on your weapons early. It helps out a whole bunch in the lower levels. I really like it, using it for the higher levels as well. That's one of the reasons I prefer fast weapons. If you are at a higher level and you have Whirlwind and you're going to use that to pick up threat, you can choose a slower weapon. Slower weapons are usable, I just think they're harder to use because you aren't hitting as frequently, so it takes more time to tag some aggro on each mob, plus it takes more time between each rage increase, though with a slower weapon you will build larger amount of rage per hit. Alright, so here in the map up north is where I usually fawn. The guy the whelplings in order to get this. A lot of people try the elite dragons. That's hard for no good reason. These little whelplings can drop it too. Um, it won't take that many kills to get it. There's a set of them up north. The most it's ever taken me is about 3 respawns. It always seems to drop pretty well, even though I've heard a lot of people complain that it takes them forever to get it. I'm really bad at fighting stuff because I'm so used to tanking. I always sit there and use my Sunder, which is pretty much pointless for DPS. Heroic Strike is what you want to use when you're DPSing and questing mostly. When you're actually tanking, Heroic Strike is a high threat ability, but you'll use 15 rage, and instead of gaining rage for the hit, you're using up your rage for the hit. So it's kind of counterintuitive. It looks like it'd be really good, but mostly you're just going to want to spam your Sunders and your Revenge. And if you have some extra rage, you can do your Rend or your Cleave maybe. But Heroic Strike is not one that I pretty much ever use unless I'm trying to do some extra damage. Like if the group has really low damage and I'm trying to make up and I'm burning some extra rage, but it's just a rage dump ability, it's not an actual ability you want to be using when you're trying to keep threat. Sunder and Revenge are going to give way higher threat per rage, so they're definitely your best options. I'm sure there's plenty I'm forgetting, but I think I'm going to wrap up the video here. The other thing that's handy is Rage Potions. If you're Rage Starved, they're a lifesaver, and Dynamite can be handy for some extra AoE threat. Hopefully this helps some of you out. If you have any suggestions, let me know below. I know my interface and setup for my keys is pretty terrible, but like I said, this is beginner guide, and I don't really set up any of that until I get to much higher levels and I'm actually concerned about it. Good luck, and if you have any comments, let me know. Thanks. Bye.